Some cases, people are non-responsive. So one of the main questions will become whether a foreclosing plaintiff is forced to try to obtain those amounts from the junior lien holders, or if the junior lien holder can come forward on their own accord.
The Weekly Friedman, your source for the most essential information in the default industry, with your host, Adam Friedman.
Today on The Weekly Friedman, we're taking a deep dive into one of the most controversial foreclosure-related statutes to come out of New Jersey in quite some time, the Community Wealth Preservation Program, or the CWPP. This bill was originally passed in January of 24 with an aim to increase home ownership through sheriff sale reforms. But it quickly became a magnet for fraud and abuse, particularly amongst so-called nonprofit bidders. The law has also faced serious constitutional challenges, especially from junior lien holders. And while a final ruling in that area is still pending, lawmakers have already proposed sweeping revisions. Joining me today to unpack it is Friedman Vartolo partner Catherine Aponte. We'll break down what's changed in the proposed revision, how it attempts to address the fraud and constitutional defects, and what key issues are still being left unresolved. Thanks for joining me today, Kat.
Thank you.
All right, so do you want to just remind me and remind our audience, the bill initially created a right of first refusal and a right of second refusal, right? And that was like a big hot button issue. What did that mean? What did that do?
So what would happen is the right of first refusal or second refusal could be exercised to purchase the property at upset price, the upset price being the minimum amount that the foreclosing plaintiff would accept.
Okay. And normally when you hear that, I mean, it doesn't sound bad, right? But I think if you could remind our audience, the reality was there could be more liens on the property. There could be equity in the property. So if the first mortgage holder says, this is my upset price, and the statute actually makes you declare it kind of far in advance, right? So this is our number. This in essence meant that if someone who had the first or second right of refusal came in, they could buy at that number. Why was that a problem? Why does that create an issue?
Sure. So one of the first issues is that the minimum number could be less than the lawfully amount owed to the plaintiff. The second problem is that once you bid or you're purchasing at that upset price, which is the lowest amount, it didn't allow for anyone else's liens, junior lien holders, to be included. And then therefore, once you buy at that price, all competitive bidding would end, and then all equity would be lost.
Right. It's interesting because this bill was aimed to help homeownership and to some extent help homeowners. But the reality is, if let's just say, for example, the property is worth 10, right? And the first mortgage holder is owed 5, and that becomes the upset price. Someone could come in for 5, whereas prior to this bill, if somebody bid 5, somebody might bid 6, might bid 7, might bid 8, and those numbers over 5, that money over 5 would go back to the homeowner. And in essence, this really kills that, right? It destroys that. It says you could just buy for what the first mortgage is owed, regardless of equity, regardless of whether lien holders are on the property. So is this revision fixing that? Is it doing away with this problem?
So it fixes the problem faced by lien holders, but it will not face the problems faced by homeowners or their next of kin in the case of a deceased borrower, because they're still going to lose once competitive bidding is killed.
Which is ironic, but look, we didn't create the bill. It's not something we could change necessarily, right? How is it going to help secondary lien holders or junior lien holders?
It will help junior lien holders in the sense that they have the ability to be included in the upset. So they will be made whole in the event that the right of refusals are exercised. A lingering question that should be addressed that has not been addressed is whether the foreclosing plaintiff will have to include that themselves, because that would offer a whole host of problems of how they're going to get the numbers for all the junior lien holders that might exist on a record. If that's not a problem, though, and we can use court processes to get junior lien holders amounts on, then they will have no problem. They'll be able to exercise their rights.
So what you're saying is the revision either enables or requires, and I guess it hasn't been decided yet, or we don't know for sure yet, but that initial upset bid, like the number that can be used if you want to exercise the first or second right of refusal, would include not just the first lien holder, but all lien holders. There are obvious issues there, right? Like getting payoffs from all these different entities can be complicated.
It could be very complicated. In some cases, people are non-responsive and you would run into the problem not being able to get it. So one of the main questions will become in my opinion, whether a foreclosing plaintiff is forced to try to obtain those amounts from the junior lien holders, or if the junior lien holder can come forward on their own accord when they would like to be included and then be included in that upset.
You know what I find interesting on this is that assuming this revision plays out the way we're kind of discussing it, the plaintiffs in these actions are largely protected. You can argue, hey, they're getting a little bit less than they're owed. But if somebody invokes one of these rights of refusal, they're getting paid their big upset price number and they're coming out okay. And they would take that upset price number anyway, presumably, right? And mortgage holders and junior lien holders, they're protected because they're making sure their number is not factored into the upset price, right? So if that number goes above a value, then nobody will invoke it. What I find interesting is that this bill designed to protect homeowners can harm one group of people, and it's homeowners. Because if there is equity in the property and there's, let's say, a first, a second, and a third, and they collectively are owed less than the value of the property, somebody can still invoke this right and buy the property for that number and completely eat away the homeowner's equity with zero recourse. Is that a correct assessment?
So there are some other revisions that are in the bill where the legislators are trying more or less to have nonprofits who exercise a second right of refusal work out agreements, but it's still not clear if there are going to be other revisions. And there is an attempt to try to clean up the fraud that would come from nonprofits exercising it. But the question still remains, and is still very valid, that if competitive bidding is quashed by the exercise of a right of refusal, then constitutionally protected rights to equity would be infringed upon.
Right. I mean, it's interesting. Any way that you squash competitive bidding, you're hurting the person that owns the thing. And the person that owns the thing, by its very definition, is always going to be a homeowner. So, well, Kat, I really appreciate it. Very informative. I know that this is an important bill. Things keep moving along, and I appreciate you keeping myself and the audience updated. Thanks for joining Catherine Aponte and I in the Weekly Friedman, your source for the most essential information in the default industry. Thanks for tuning in, and looking forward to seeing you next time.